Today we're going to talk about our wonderful tax credits, the refundable and non-refundable credits. These are the ones that you are going to see that are like the most popular, that is all over Instagram. The ones that everybody is talking about, the ones that is getting everybody due diligence audits. Yeah. So this training, you can kind of call it due diligence because we're going to get into due diligence afterwards, but it's mostly learning about the credits, which ones are refundable, which ones are non-refundable, and how they work, and as well as like all of the information of where the eligibility is and non-eligibility, where they're not eligible and things of that nature. So we're going to go over the child tax the child tax credit, aka CTC, as well as the additional child tax credit. We're going to go over the other dependent credit, elderly or disabled credit, the education credit, American Opportunity Tax Credit, as well as the lifetime learning credit and the earned income tax credit. So jumping right into it, we're going to get into the child independent care credit. So the child independent care credit is on form 2441. It is for those that actually pay for child independent care. I'm not a fan of this credit. Of course, I'm a fan of the credit, but I'm not really a fan of the credit because me personally, I pay $1,700 a month for my daughter to go to daycare, or at least I did. Now she's in kindergarten. I paid $1,700 a month. $1,700 times 12. I'm not good with math off the top of my head. 17 times 12 is $20,400 a year that I would spend in daycare expense. And this particular credit gives you a maximum of $6,000, and it actually phases out after you make a certain amount of money. So I would never get the full $6,000. And what is $6,000 to $20,400 that I spend in a year? It's not much. But to get into what it requires to take this credit, it requires a qualifying person under your care. So a child under the age of 13 by the last day of the year, spouse who is mentally or physically disabled and has lived with you for more than half the year. Earned income is required. So you cannot claim this this credit if you don't have earned income. So unemployment is not earned income. They wouldn't be able to claim this credit. It has to be earned income, meaning that it's income that you actually worked for. Interest income is not earned income. That's more so passive income. So sometimes when people try to get this credit and they've been on unemployment Section 8 the whole entire year, and they're trying to get this credit, it doesn't work. And they're like, oh my goodness, something is wrong with your tax software. Nothing's wrong with the tax software. Plain and simple, you are not entitled to the credit because you don't have earned credit. The expense maximum is $6,000. So after $6,000, the credit is no longer calculated. Again, I was spending $20,400 a year. What is $6,000? I wish I could find a daycare that was only $6,000. I think that's what, $500 a month. Oh my God, I would be in heaven. That would be amazing. But I don't think they exist in New York anymore. It cannot surpass earned income for the year. So again, somebody would actually need to have earned income, and it can't be more than the earned income because it's a non-refundable credit. Non-refundable credit means once you take this credit and your income is down to zero, that's it. You don't get to take any more to create a refund. So non-refundable will take your tax liability down to zero, and that's it. No more. It's claimed on form 2441, and it's attached to 1040. Remember, your 1040 is your main form, and all the forms behind it are going to attach to the 1040. The credit can be up to 35% of the expense. So going back and doing some more little math, let's see, 20,400 times 0.35 is only $7,140. So automatically, I'm not getting $1,140 of the 35% of the expense. So this credit is something that I personally feel needs to be revisited, by the IRS like moons and moons and moons ago, because at this point in time, this is just ridiculous for it not to be more than what it is. Honestly, it's crazy. Yeah, it needs to be way more than what it is. In order to be able to deduct this credit, you got to have the name, the address, the EIN number, or social security number, because sometimes the daycare provider or the person that's providing the care is a person and not necessarily a business, and the amount. Just to let you know, and taxpayers know this as well, the IRS will push through a tax return that does not have the EIN number. They will allow you to push through a return like that. The issue with that is, sorry, I'm trying to put this so that I'm not looking in 20 different places with all the different computers I have. The issue with that is they will come back and audit you as well. They can hold up a refund because they don't have this information. I know the first time that I moved out here to Westchester, I didn't have the information, the EIN number, and I pushed through my return, and New York State audited me immediately because I didn't have the EIN number, so I had to go get the EIN number. I wasn't getting a refund anyway, but still, they wanted to make sure, so then I could at least get the little bit of credit that I was getting. So do know that it will push through without the EIN number, but it also gives you a really high chance of an audit. So now we're going to get into the Schedule 8812, which is the child tax credit and other dependent credit. So CTC. CTC, I'm pretty sure you guys are seeing all over Instagram right now. People are up in a frenzy over CTC for the simple fact that CTC has not necessarily been solidified by legislation as of yet. Right now, CTC is $2,000 with an ACTC, which is an additional child tax credit of $1,600, which is like the refundable part of it. And people are waiting. Legislation is in talks to make it $3,800, which is $200 more at this point. And it hasn't passed as of yet. So I know you guys are seeing a lot of tax preparers saying, oh, don't file your return yet. Wait till legislation passes this. You can get more money, blah, 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 blah. So that is all up in the air right now. And this is the credit that they're talking about, and has all of, Twitter, tax Instagram, tax Facebook up in a frenzy. So to qualify for CTC, you have to be under the age of 17 by the end of the year. You have to be a son, daughter, stepchild, eligible foster child, brother, sister, stepbrother, stepsister, half brother, half sister, or descendant of one of these. For example, grandchild, niece, or nephew. Basically, blood related. You gotta be blood related. Okay? It can't be somebody who is my godchild. They can go other dependent credit, but they cannot go CTC. Has to be some type of blood relation. Provide no more than half of their own financial support during the year. You have to provide more than half of their support. They can't provide it for themselves. They can't provide it for themselves. You have to provide it for them. What else we got going on? They have lived with you for more than half the year. So when we're asking these questions to our taxpayers, we're asking, has this person lived with you more than 6 months? And that's the verbiage that we want to use, because you can't say, did they live with you for 6 months? Because 6 months is only half the year. They have to live with them for more than 6 months. So we have to remember that when we're asking those questions with the half in it, it's always more than half. It's never exactly half. And it's also really good for documentation purposes. So when we're asking, we can't say, oh, child lived with the taxpayer for 6 months. That's not good enough. They had to have lived with the taxpayer for more than 6 months. My Texas audit girl called me last night. She's not doing too well. She's not doing too well. But one of the things that she asked me was about, well, they live with them for 6 months, so shouldn't they be eligible? No. 6 months is the bare minimum. It has to be more than 6 months. Be properly claimed as a dependent on your return, not file a joint return with their spouse for the year or for the tax year, or file it or only claim refund of withheld income tax or estimated tax paid. So that is for those tax returns where people would say, oh, you don't need to file a tax return for the simple fact that, you know, you're under the standard deduction or something like that. Sometimes people do file those tax returns, even though they're under the standard deduction, to get back the taxes that they paid in. Obviously, if you paid in no tax and you're under the standard deduction, you're not going to get anything back per se, and you don't have dependents and you're just a regular person. But if you are a regular person, and then you actually paid in tax, and then you go ahead and claim all of this wonderful stuff, you can get whatever you paid in back. But again, these are non-refundable. So this is going to stop at whatever income you have up until it gets your income to zero. It can't get past zero. Non-refundable. Income to zero, and that's it. No more. Have been a U.S. citizen, U.S. national, or U.S. resident alien. Are you waking up? Are you sleeping? What are you doing? Okay, so that is for the CTC, which has literally Instagram and everything else up in a frenzy right now. Then we're going to get into the other dependent care credit. The other dependent credit, sorry. So taxpayers with dependents who don't qualify for CTC. So that means that you cannot take CTC and ODC on a particular person, may be able to claim the credit for other dependents. They can claim this credit in addition to the child tax credit and earned income credit, and is a non-refundable credit as well, and it's $500. That's it, $500. The eligibility, any age, Social Security or ITIN, any relative type, so it doesn't have to be a blood relation. I could be taking care of my best friend. And dependents that aren't relatives. So that goes back to the same thing. Any relative type, as well as dependents that aren't relatives. So at this point, it could be my godchild without a problem. It could be my godchild. They don't have to be related to me. It doesn't have to be that lineage. Okay. Other dependent credit there isn't much there. $500, and that's basically all she wrote for that one. Now we're going to get into the credit for the elderly or disabled, which is on the Schedule R. So this credit for the elderly or disabled is a non-refundable credit. One second. Yes, child, I'm teaching. What's up? Okay. Bye. Love you, bye. Making sure that I'm showing up to his game.
Yeah. I don't blame him.
My kids don't play. They don't play with me. They don't give me no time. Like, I'm already at the school, okay? I'm like, it's okay. You stay sleeping. So credit for elderly or disabled is a non-refundable credit as well for the elderly or disabled. And this credit ranges between $3,750 and $7,500. Of course, it depends on your income. Get your income down to zero, no further than zero. None of that is refundable back to you. So you have age 65 or older, or retired on permanent and total disability and receive taxable disability income for the tax year. And all of these wonderful words are highlighted because these are meaning in lieu of, not in lieu of, in addition to, right? So ands are in addition to, and ors are in lieu of. And with an adjusted gross income or the total of non-taxable Social Security, pensions, annuities, or disability income under specific limits. One thing's for sure, two things for certain, these particular credits were highly, highly, highly abused in the past. And this is why all these and or ors are in there. And one of the stipulations for the permanent and total disabled, you gotta have it written up by a doctor. You have to have a doctor's note. And I will tell you guys this, if somebody is coming in and they're saying that they want to take this credit because they're disabled, make sure you have the doctor's note on file. Because even though we're not required to see it and we can just take people's word, this is one of the things that I would absolutely say, get the documentation for. Because you can't just, they can't feel like they're disabled. They can't say, oh, my Social Security says that I am this amount disabled. It says permanent and total. So what does that mean? That means 100%. That means that they can come in and be collecting Social Security disability payments. But just because you're collecting does not mean that you are permanent, total, and disabled. See, this is permanent and total disabled. So some people are only 25% disabled and they're still able to work. Some people are only 75%, 80% disabled. This is saying 100%. So you want to get the doctor's note that says that if they are 100% disabled, just because they're receiving disability income does not make them 100% disabled. And this is one of the credits that is highly, highly, highly abused because people are not checking to see and just taking word of mouth, even though we're not investigators and that's not our job to actually see the documentation, but it just helps us a little bit more to know. This is one of the things that I would say you want to see documentation on. Not required, but I would just say to cover yourself, what is it? CYA, that's how they call it. CYA, get the documentation to make sure that they are permanent and totally disabled. And it's documented by a doctor, not something that they just feel that they are. Okay? The education credit, American Opportunity Credit and Lifetime Learning Credit. Those are the two education credits that are available to us from the good old IRS. It's a refundable credit. So that means we can get down to zero and still have it, whatever the remaining is, can be refunded back to us. It helps with the cost of higher education by reducing the amount of tax owed on your tax return. Eligibility must meet all three. So your dependent or a third party pays qualified education expenses for higher education. What is a qualified education expense? Tuition, fees, other related expenses for an eligible student that are required for enrollment or attendance at an eligible educational institution. You see how it says required? Remember that. So books, those are required. That's something else that, is an expense that does qualify. Expenses that don't qualify, room and board. Room and board is not required. You can live off campus or on campus. Insurance, not required. Medical expenses, not required. Transportation, not required. And similar personal living or family expenses. So that is living off the campus. Those do not qualify for any of the education credits. So it's really important to understand that, what do they call those? Dorm rooms. Dorm rooms is not an expense that is included in this. And when you're looking at the 1098T, which I believe I have a copy of, when you're looking at the 1098T, you have to understand what you're looking at. So the other requirements are going to be an eligible student must be enrolled at an eligible educational institution. What is an eligible educational institution? Eligible educational institution must participate in the student aid program ran by the U.S. Department of Education. That's simple. If they are not enrolled in that, and you guys see a lot of people, this, for instance, people are running their own courses. People are investing a lot of money in courses, like a lot of money in courses that they can't even deduct on their tax return. Because me, I'm not enrolled in the student aid program run by the U.S. Department of Education. So unfortunately, this is not necessarily deductible to you in the sense of the American Opportunity Credit or the Lifetime Learning Credit, but it is deductible to you, just to put this out there, on your Schedule C as professional development. So the money that you invested in this particular program will only be deductible to you guys on your Schedule C as a professional development. But as far as these credits, these educational credits, these are not, they're not deductible. They're not deductible that way. The eligible student is yourself, your spouse, or a dependent you list on your return. Have to be on your return. They have to match up. So on the 8863, which is where you're going to claim this credit, the social security number that you put in there and the student's name have to be somebody that is actually on the return. So you're not eligible when you list you as a dependent on another tax return. So if I say, hey, my son's father can claim my son while he's in college and I'm going to take his education, it doesn't work like that. He's got to be on my return as a dependent. Married filing separately. Married filing separately, you lose a lot of credits. You lose a lot of eligibility for a lot of credits when you do married filing separately. And this just so happens to be one of them. They already claimed or deducted another higher education benefit using the same student or same expense, meaning you cannot do the American Opportunity Credit and the Lifetime Learning Credit simultaneously for the same dependent. For the same person. It doesn't even have to be dependent, because I could be enrolled in school as the taxpayer. You or your spouse were a non-resident alien for any part of the year and did not choose to be treated as a resident alien for tax purposes. What does that mean? The IRS wants you to pay taxes. If you decide that you don't want to pay taxes, you can't get this credit. They're not going to issue you any funds. IRS is very picky about who they give their money to. The United States in general is picky about who they give their money to. So if you aren't going to pay into our tax system may not pass, you know, in this particular case, issue you a credit. What happened? Bad dreams? You having bad dreams? Out of nowhere. They may not issue you this credit. Night terrors. Okay. Night. I keep yawning, which is terrible. American Opportunity Credit. So that is one of the education credits that we just spoke about. But we get a little bit more in depth because there are different guidelines for the American Opportunity Credit and the Lifetime Learning Credit. So the American Opportunity Credit is refundable up to $1,000 or 40% of the remaining credit. Excuse me, the credit itself can be up to $2,500. So if I got down to $1,000, making my tax liability my taxable income $0, and it only took $1,000, I have $1,500 left of this credit left over. I can only take, as the refundable part of it, $1,000 because I'm already at $0, or 40% of the remaining credit. So let's see, 1,500 times 0.4 is $600. Can claim for the first 4 years of enrollment in an educational institution. So this is where this credit gets abused a lot, the American Opportunity Credit, because people will continue to say that they're in their first 4 years of education just to get this credit. They'll be like on their master's program, which takes 5 years. They'll be on their PhD program, still trying to get this credit, saying that they're in their first 4 years because this credit is a lot more than the Lifetime Learning Credit.
And the PhD takes 20 years now.
But listen, it takes forever. I dropped out of the program. So I was just like, listen, dissertations and all this other stuff. I didn't want to be in school anymore. I just did not. You get tired of school after a while. And I was just like, I can't write these essays all the time like this anymore. So I didn't last in the PhD program like at all. But I am going to go back for tax to be a tax attorney. But that's a different conversation for another day. So yes, this is how this particular credit is seriously abused. People continuing to say that, yes, I'm in my first 4 years of education, when they're clearly not. Let's see, eligibility, pursuing a degree or other recognized educational credential. Again, it has to be enrolled in the student aid program ran by the U.S. Department of Education, enrolled at least half-time for at least one academic period beginning in the year. So they could be in one semester only enrolled part-time, half-time, excuse me. Not have finished the first 4 years of higher education at the beginning of the tax year. This is how it gets abused. Because just think about it. If I went to school for 4 years, right? Because I didn't go to my master's program directly after my bachelor's degree. So I went to school for my first 4 years. I went for my master's program maybe 3 or 4 years after that. My son was getting older. 3 or 4 years after I graduated with my my bachelor's. The way that the tax system works, the IRS looks at the last 3 to 6 years, depending on if there's an omission of, depending on a lot of different things, but 3 years for sure. 3 years for you to be in compliance, right? Or 6 years to be in compliance, but they're only looking at the last 3 years. So if they're looking at the last 3 years and they see that I have not claimed that credit, and I turn around and I claim the credit, they're not really gonna know. They're not gonna know off the jump, shall I say. They're not gonna, especially if I went back to school after 6 years, those other tax returns aren't even present in their system right away. They're not doing they can't do anything because the statute is gone, blown, whatever. So they're not really gonna touch those last 6 years. So if I go back to school after 6 years of being after school, and I go and I, do this credit, they're not really gonna know. So it's our job to ask the right questions to make sure that this is not this is a person's first 4 years of education and that they actually qualify for this credit. And again, whatever answers they give us are the answers we take. We are not investigators. We are not going to look at tax returns from a million years ago, because that's just not our job. 1 second. Let's tell my child to come out here and give me my charger. But that is how that particular credit is highly abused. Not have claimed the American Opportunity Credit or former Hope Credit for more than 4 years. Can you please come out here and give me my charger for my tablet? Thank you. And not have, this is a big one, and you will be prompted to ask this question, but not have a felony drug conviction at the end of the year. So the system is automatically, come here, Gianni, is automatically going to prompt you to ask, you can bring that too, is going to prompt you, it's in my purse, my North Face bag, is going to prompt you to ask that question. They may feel uncomfortable answering that question, but it is a part of your due diligence to make sure that you have that documented. Is that a North Face bag? The little one on the, it's not there? You don't see a bag on the stroller? Is there a bag attached to the stroller? Oh. Yeah, right in there should be or maybe it's in, or it might be in Shallow's bag. Just check all the bags. Thank you. Let me see, is that different from a regular phone charger? That's not it. Let me see. No, this is a phone charger. Tablet charger. It shuts off. That's it. Plug it in. Thank you. Got it?
From here.
My IT guy.
Done. What does IT mean?
You're my IT guy.
Is it charging?
I believe so. Yep, it is. Thank you. Okay. So yes, this is a part of due diligence. Sorry about that. This is a part of due diligence, and we're going to need to ask them, and you can also get Shiloh a bottle. You're gonna need to ask them that question. They're going to feel uncomfortable. Of course, who wants to really talk about their criminal history when it comes down to preparing taxes? But we have to ask the question. You will be prompted by the system. It is a part of due diligence to ask the question. No, there's a bottle with water in there, and you're gonna put 2 scoops in it. Okay, hi Melissa. 2 scoops right here.
Hello, hi everybody.
Lifetime learning credit. So this is the second credit, the second education credit. And this one is true to its name, what you're going to claim after claiming the American Opportunity Tax Credit, AKA the Hope Credit. I don't know if any of you guys claimed it back in the day when you were in school, for your first 4 years. But it was called the Hope Credit way back then. I'm not trying to age myself.
Yeah, I did. Mhm.
Yeah, I did too. And it was the Hope Credit. Girl, I'm sure I'm older than you, so yes.
Yeah, it was the Hope Credit.
And I
back
took
in the
that
day.
credit every time. If I didn't know anything, I knew to take my Hope Credit, okay? So.
Exactly. We were just talking about how the Hope Credit to us, the Hope Credit is something that is highly abused because you have people that are going back to school. You know, the IRS is really looking for compliance within the first 3 to 6 years. So if people decide they want to go back to school 6 years later, I'm going to go back for my master's degree, I'm going to go back for whatever may have you. The IRS doesn't know that that's not your first 4 years. They don't have those tax returns sitting in front of them to say, oh, this is going to be year number 4. They're not counting at that point after 6 years, after 3 years. They're not really looking at those returns. So that's how the American Opportunity Tax Credit is, AKA the Hope Credit, is highly abused nowadays, is people continuing to take it after the first 4 years. So when we're asking, and the system will prompt you to ask as well, okay, so are you, what type of program are you in? An undergraduate degree? Are you in a master's degree? You know, what type of program are you in? If they're saying master's, we already know it takes more than 4 years to get your master's. So we already know that that is not a Hope Credit, an Opportunity Tax Credit. That is more so a lifetime learning credit at that point. So we just got to make sure that we're asking those type of questions. And again, it's a part of, that one is seriously a part of due diligence, which we will go over today as well. Or maybe on Schedule C day, maybe start it and finish it on our Schedule C day, which will most likely be tomorrow. But yes, so that. And now we have the lifetime learning credit, is what you would take if you're in school for your master's, if you are in school for your PhD. Anytime after the first 4 years of school, this is the credit that you are going to take, the lifetime learning credit. So the dependent or third party has qualifying education expense. We went over what are qualifying education expenses. You or your dependent or third party pay the education expenses for an eligible student enrolled in an eligible educational institution. As we know, an eligible educational institution is any institution that is enrolled for enrolled with the student aid program under the U.S. Department of Education. The eligible student is me, my spouse, or a dependent listed on your return. They got to be on the return. They're enrolled or taking courses at an eligible education institute. They are taking higher education courses or a course to get a degree or other recognized education credential. Nurses, you know, those nurses schools that they have, vocational schools, those all count, or to improve in job skills, and be enrolled for at least 1 academic period beginning in the tax year. So all it takes is 1 semester, 1 period to be enrolled for them to be able to be eligible for these credits. And the lifetime learning credit, as well as the American Opportunity Tax Credit, located on the 8860 30. Here goes everybody's favorite, which is the Earned Income Tax Credit. So we went over CTC, we went over additional, we went over the other dependent credit, we went over head of household yesterday. We just went over the American Opportunity Tax Credit. Now we're gonna go into the Earned Income Tax Credit, which is everybody's favorite, and we're gonna go just into it. So it's low to moderate income workers with qualifying children that may be eligible to claim the Earned Income Tax Credit, EITC. Sometimes you will hear it as EIC credit, Earned Income Credit. There's just so many variations of it as it has evolved over the years. I know me as being old school and doing taxes forever and a day, I still refer to it as EIC. Once people started saying EITC, I was like, what's that? That's new? I didn't know what the T stood for. I thought it was kind of known that it was a tax credit, but they put a T in there, which was weird. So you have to have earned income. So we spoke about that before. Earned income is not Social Security income. It is not unemployment income. It is not interest income. Those are not income. Those are mostly pass-through income. Earned income is income that you worked for and you earned. So income under $63,398. Have investment income below $11,000 in a taxable year. Investment income is not always earned income. It could be, could not be. You have to really ask questions to determine that. The system is automatically going to say that it is passive income, which means it's not earned income. And if you have passive, excuse me, if you have passive income coming in over $11,000, they ain't messing with you with this earned income credit. Must have a Social Security number. So at this point in time, ITINs are not acceptable. Only Social Security. ITINs were acceptable for some of the other credits, but not EITC, not EITC. You must be a U.S. citizen or resident alien all year. So you couldn't have gotten your documentation in June. You gotta have been from January to December. And not file a 2555 foreign earned income. So again, I don't know what their beef is with when it comes to this. I know it's the higher credit of all of them, depending on your income and the number of children and so on and so forth. And we'll get into that as well. But again, the US doesn't like to just issue money to people who are not paying into the US system. So they are very, very picky when it comes to this credit and it comes to you paying into the actual system or your dependents potentially paying into the system as they get older. You keep scratching your face. You want to stop scratching your face? Okay. So let's get into this. Is this gonna let me click on it? Oops, sorry. I gotta do it on this computer. Can you see? No, I have to share this tab. Okay. So I want to get into the income limits and the credit table for earned income for 2023, because this is what you're seeing all over Instagram, right? All over Instagram, people are putting up this income table. And this is a little frightening for me personally, because you're showing us the type of clientele that you are looking for. You are giving these taxpayers the chance
that part.
Yeah.
That part.
That part. You're giving these taxpayers a chance to premeditate how their tax return is going to look when they get there, whether it is real numbers or not. They're going to come in there and they're going to give you what is necessary to hit the maximum EITC credit, because it's a refundable credit. So they can hit 0 and still get money back. So that is what they're doing. They're going to make sure that if they have 3 children, they are coming in there with income as high as $56,838. I'm gonna do it from over here. All these computers. So this, you guys see this all over Instagram, is going to tell you just how much money or should I say the maximum amount of money that you're going to get back by having these children. So no qualifying children, $600. One qualifying child, $3,995. Two qualifying children, $6,604. Three or more qualifying children, $7,430. They are ready, willing, and able to make sure that their income is within this wonderful guideline to get back. I'm not sure, is this showing the maximum? For the maximum, there you go. For the maximum AGI. That's what you can anticipate on getting back refundable, contingent on you paying in enough taxes to have zero tax liability and to get this additional income back. There's that. And then you have the rules. We already did the rules. I believe we did the rules. We did the rules? Yeah, we did the rules. Sorry. But let's still get into it. So we already know the valid social security number, right? And then we have the 4 tests for qualifying children. The age, the AAR, and I don't know what this is, but the joint return. Let's go into age. Hi, Shiloh. So to be qualifying child for EITC, your child must be any age and permanently and totally disabled at any time during the year, right? Or we just went over the and the ors, the lose, and the in addition to, under the age of 19 at the end of the year and younger than you or your spouse. Or under the age of 24 at the end of the year and a full-time student for at least 5 months of the year and younger than you. It gets into the full-time student definition and so on and so forth. The relationship test. For EITC, it has to be, again, back to that lineage that we were talking about with CTC, a son, a daughter, a stepchild, adopted child, foster child, brother, sister, half-brother, half-sister, stepsister, or stepbrother, grandchild, niece, or nephew. Now, when we're talking about when we're talking about stepsister, stepbrother, half this, half that, brother, sister, so on and so forth, we go back up here and we apply the fact that they have to be younger than you. Because when these step relationships, you know, they could possibly be of the same age or older, but they have to be younger. Adopted child is always a good, and foster child is good as well. So when people start coming in with their this is my godson, this is my goddaughter, you know, and all of those other odd relationships, this is my cousin, those do not apply for EITC, nor do they apply for CTC. Residency. So to qualify, must have lived in the same home as you in the United States for more than half the year. So remember, as I said before, when you're asking your questions and you're documenting, saying 6 months of the year is not enough. It has to be more than half the year. So when you're documenting and you're asking a question, hey, did they live with you for more than 6 months? And they will say yes or no. So when you document it, child lived with the taxpayer for more than 6 months.
We follow up what date, or we just ask if it's over 6 months?
Just ask if it's over 6 months. You don't have, I mean, excuse me, if that is gonna make you comfortable, having what day, then definitely document that, because you wanna document up until comfortability.
Okay.
Yep. Temporary time away from home. So if they're sick, if they're at school, if they're in juvie, which is crazy, kidnapping, I didn't even know it said that, oh my God. Kidnapping, which is scary. Any of those things, those are temporary times away from home, and it does not play against, it does not play against the time that they lived with you. That is still considered to be in your care. I had no idea that they added kidnapping to this. Oh my God. Yeah, it's a little uncomfortable. So we have those situations like we were talking about when it comes down to the joint returns and a married couple deciding that, you know what, you take him, I'm going to do single, and I'm going to do head of household. This clears it up for us. If your child can file a joint return with, I'm sorry, not even that part, sorry. This is your child being a married child. So if your child can file a joint return with another person, their husband or their wife, you may not be able to claim that. So me, for instance, I will take me as an example. I got married at the age of 20. And my dad was super upset. I eloped. I didn't tell anybody. I just got up, I left, I got married, got pregnant, came back, and I was in college, and I came back, and I thought I was still gonna live at my parents' house. They gave me 30 days to get the hell out, and I couldn't understand why, because I still was, my mind was still very juvenile. And my dad was so upset with me because, and he said this, and the more that I learned about taxes as I got older, I learned about all these credits and why he was so upset. I was like, oh, I made him lose out on money. Got it. But he was so upset with me because he even said it. He was like, I can't even file for you on my return no more. And I was like, what is that supposed to mean? Didn't really know. I knew about returns, but didn't really know about like these credits and stuff, which is funny because as soon as I got kicked out, like I ended up getting a job at that tax office. Hysterical. So yeah, he was really upset that I was under the age where he could still claim me, because I think back then it was 21, it wasn't 24, now it's 24. If I'm in school, I was 20, I was under the age where he could still claim me, but he couldn't claim me because I was married. And he even told me to go get an annulment, and I should have listened. But that's neither here nor there. So they can't file a return with anybody. That is that part. So those are basically, guys, the credits. And now I'm going to get into the due diligence part of the credits, which is what you're seeing. Oh, he's very aggy today. Sorry, he had a heart echo and he is just still not happy from the doctor's office. So those are the credits. Yeah, he's okay though. He's just very aggy ever since the doctor's office. Hello, I'm trying to teach. Appreciate you. So those are the credits that, let me go back. Share this one. Let me go back. And here. Share this tab instead. Those are our credits, because I don't think our credits end up on Schedule 3, which, as we know, all flow through to the Schedule 1040. So this is where you will see. And being that we're on the Schedule 3, let's zoom in here. You guys are seeing a lot of on Instagram. I don't know if you aren't, but I have been. As you know, this year, there weren't a lot of credits, right? Everybody's complaining, oh, there's no credits that were released, this, that, and the third. If we get this increase, if we actually get this increase in the CTC to make it $3,800 opposed to $3,600, that would be the most that they give us as far as credits this year, because they haven't given us any credits. Why? Because people have abused them to the point that the government is like, now you can figure it out for yourself. COVID is done. Everything is going back to pre-COVID, not a lot of credits. So what's happening on these tax returns, a lot of these tax returns, where people are boosting tax returns. I literally just had a consultation before I got on this thing for a mentee session. And she was like, what is this? She was really concerned. She's a new tax preparer. This is only her second year. And she was really concerned because she sees a lot of people posting on Instagram all of this money that they're able to get back for people. And she's like, am I doing something wrong? Like, what's the tea? How do I get this money back too? Because my people are not seeing these numbers. So how do I get this money back too? So I had to explain to her 9 times out of 10, it's fraud. That's not real. Those aren't real numbers. We are pre-COVID numbers. It just isn't going to work like that anymore. And one way that people are doing fraud this year, somebody got super creative And this line Z that you see, line 13, Z, other payments or refundable credits. Remember, a refundable credit means that you can go below zero, right? You go below zero, and that's going to be refunded back to you, right? That's what that's what that means. So with that being said, people are forcing numbers into line 13Z and just saying $13,000. And with that $13,000, that's what's getting refunded back to them because it's a refundable credit or it's being taken away from whatever taxable liability that they still have. So this right here is basically the T for this year's tax season on how people are able to get back so much money when they're really not entitled to it. So line 13Z, I'll be completely honest with you, being that I am the EFIN holder for us, if I see that, me and you gonna have a problem. Because it's underneath my EFIN and it's not gonna be sent out. It's not gonna be sent out unless they have actual documentation of what other payments they made or what other refundable credits that they actually have. And to be honest with you, I can't even think of anything unless they were due something in previous years and the IRS sent them a letter and let them know that they can claim it in upcoming years. But other than that, off the top of my head, I have no clue. I have no clue. Other payments, that's one thing. Refundable credits, couldn't tell you. But that is the T for 2023 filing season. That is the new fraud that's going on. Any questions about the credits before I get into due diligence with those credits? No? Pretty straightforward. But now we're gonna get into the due diligence training that I had given not too long ago. It was a couple of weeks ago. I gave this due diligence training and it blew people's minds, which I was really confused about because due diligence has been the same due diligence forever. And I know that Instagram is in a frenzy right now. Instagram or social media, excuse me, should I say social media tax is in a frenzy right now because of the fact that IRS had a training on due diligence, and unfortunately, a lot of people were not trained properly when it comes down to due diligence. So hearing what the IRS had to say, you know, they're just not happy with it. There was even one girl who said in her Facebook group, forget what the IRS is saying, I'm gonna teach you how to do due diligence. I'm sorry, ma'am. I didn't realize that you were above and beyond the IRS, but okay. Whatever you say, friend. So we're gonna get right into the due diligence training.
So what was she saying, that you do the tax return wrong and then clean it up later with due diligence? Or is that
I didn't even go to her training. I did not go to her training because she sounded crazy.
Gotcha.
She's like really saying F what the IRS has to say about due diligence. I'm gonna teach you how to do due diligence.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay, sis, and I hope you can pay all of those fees because I'm about to teach you right now about the fees when it comes to those. So basically, those credits that we just went over can come with what's called a due diligence check with the IRS. The IRS performs due diligence checks on tax preparers who have a high volume of those credits and head of household status. So basically, let's get into it. God bless you. Let's get into it. Due diligence by the IRS definition is the exercise of care and attention in preparing and filing tax returns and other documents, as well as determining the correctness of representation made by you to your client or by the IRS. Basically, compliance, right? We are here to interpret and use the tax law advantageously for our taxpayers. So we can't be abusing the law. We have a due diligence to apply it and apply it correctly. So the IRS expects us to exercise the following, which are the 4 due diligence requirements: know and understand the tax law, ask clarifying questions to the taxpayer in regards to the tax law, Document the questions asked, as well as keep a record of the taxpayer's responses. Just yesterday, like I was telling you about my homegirl, well, not my homegirl, but the tax preparer in Texas that needs my help. She did not know that she had to document the questions that she asked. And she was just documenting stuff, I guess, answers from the taxpayer, but not actually documenting the questions that she asked. Of course you need, because I can say we, but the IRS needs to know that you're asking the proper questions to get the proper answers to be able to apply the tax law to these people's tax returns. Gather all of the facts, ensuring that the client qualifies for credits claimed on the tax return. We have to make sure that they can, we have to make sure that they can actually claim this stuff on the tax return by gathering all the facts, which includes us asking more and more and more questions to the point of comfortability. Doesn't necessarily require us to look at documentation, but to ask more and more questions. So as I was saying, these checks before and during the season. Before the season starts, you're going to receive some letters and we're going to go over those. But what triggers them is going to be a high volume of returns containing EITC, which we just went over, earned income tax credit, CTC, child tax credit, additional child tax credit, other dependent credit, American Opportunity Tax Credit, head of household status, failed verifications. Does anybody know what a verification is? Or, God bless you, have you seen a verification letter?
I don't know.
No? Okay, so a verification is when, did you know, Jackie? I'm sorry.
No, I said no.
Okay,
Yes,
So
I've
there-
seen them.
you've seen them? Okay, so a
Yes.
verification letter is a letter that is sent to the taxpayer from the IRS telling them that they need to come and verify themselves. They got to verify their name, their date, their address, and all of that other identifying information. They can do it with a birth certificate. They can do it with the driver's license. Verification back in the day, you used to be able to do it over the phone. Nowadays, because there's so much fraud going on, verification has become mini investigations. And a lot of tax preparers don't even realize that. So if your client gets a verification letter and they're told to call in, and unfortunately, they can't verify over the phone, and they're being requested to come to the tax office, 9 times out of 10, that's a mini investigation on you, the tax preparer. Because verification should, if they come into the tax office, should be able to be done at the window or not going in a back room, sitting down, being asked questions with 2 people there. Anytime there's 2 people there, one is the actual employee, the other one is the investigator. So what's happening nowadays, especially for those people that have these high volume of these type of returns, the verification process has become many investigations where people are called into the office, brought into a back room, and asked questions about their tax preparer. Verification, you should only be asking questions about me, my name, my address, and verifying it against the tax return. Can I see your birth certificate? Can I see your social security card? Can I see your driver's license? But now they're asking a lot of questions in regards to the preparers, and the preparers aren't even realizing it, but they're being investigated. So that's what a verification is. So failed verifications. Schedule C's maxing out EITC. EITC is the highest refundable credit. So people like to go there, go and max it out. So people max it out by creating false Schedule C's to get people within the guidelines to get the maximum EITC. So that's why, like what I was saying yesterday, you want to make sure that you're asking the proper questions. You want to make sure that you're asking the proper questions when it comes down to head of household, when it comes down to Schedule C's, because one of the most important things, and one of the things that they're seeing most frequently that people, for whatever reason, weren't getting hip to, was the fact that if I make $11,000 a year and my rent is $1,000, and that's what I'm saying, hey, my rent is $1,000, and I have 3 dependents, how in the hey did I support myself and my dependents with only $11,000 out of the year? Got to ask additional questions. Did you receive government assistance? Did you take out loans? Did anybody else help you financially? Do you have credit cards? All of those additional questions have got to be asked. And of course, I give you these questions as well to make sure that you're asking your clients if they ever get in that situation. Because it's kind of hard to run a business when you're not even making money on W-2. Or like, how are you living? What's going on here? How are you supplying that business? Odd dependent relationships. Odd dependent relationships are going to be the niece, the nephew, the godchildren, the the cousins, the baby cousins and stuff like that. Those are odd relationships, because there are ways to verify your cousin relationships, but that's not our job. But you have to ask certain questions. Niece and nephew, where are the parents? Why aren't the parents able to claim these children? Did the parents supply any help to you to raise these children? All of these questions have to be asked. Were the niece and nephew able to pay their own way? Did they have a job? All of those questions have got to be asked to verify that this person can actually qualify for head of household status, and they provided and meet all of the requirements as head of household for that particular individual. And that particular individual meets all the requirements for those credits. Okay. Next screen. So these are the letters that have been going out. So the type of due diligence checks that happen, they're in a tiered kind of order. So it could be an educational letter, which can be like, hey, we're just letting you know that this is how to claim EITC and stuff of that nature. Or it could be a phone call. Hey, I'm calling from the IRS and I just want to talk to you about due diligence and making sure that you're following the rules. It could be what's called a knock and talk. A knock and talk is when the IRS actually goes to the taxpayer's place of business, and they knock and they talk and they're like, hey, can I take a few minutes to talk to you about how due diligence works with the IRS? And then after those, the next tier is going to be a face-to-face examination. Is when the IRS comes into their actual office and starts to audit their taxpayers' tax returns. So educational letters, back in the day, we used to call them warning shots. So it's like shots fired. You ever heard when people are like, ooh, shots fired? That's basically what those educational letters are. And those educational letters come out pre-season. So what do we call the season? The season is from January to April, right? April 15th. Pre-season basically is June all the way to December. That's when you see people starting to hire new tax preparers and do all of this stuff. That is, why is my battery low and about to die? Hold on. Sorry, Shiloh. Why did he unplug my battery? Gianni, why did you do that? Why did he do it? Is the question. I tell you something about having boys. I tell you, they will. Anyway, boys, young boys think like grown men. The frame of mind doesn't change. It's crazy. Okay. So, warning shot letters come out between June and December. They kind of let the people know, like, hey, we don't think that you are filing your EITC tax returns properly. Make sure that you're watching yourself. The IRS is basically telling people you are on our radar because we don't think that you're filing this stuff properly. That's what the IRS is saying. And those come out in letters 5025, 5138, 6138, and 6595. Which one? The 6138 is the more, how do I say it? I guess the scarier letter, for the simple fact that within that letter, it tells the tax preparer, that we are talking to your people. That's what they're saying. We have interviewed some of, excuse me, we have interviewed some of your taxpayers. Now, if you guys know, like I know, taxpayers are not trying to get in trouble. When they get those credits taken away and they owe that money back and they're being interviewed by the IRS, what do you think that they're saying during that interview? Anybody? Wild guess.
I would imagine they blaming everything on the tax preparer, right?
Exactly what's happening. Can you guys see me? Can you guys see me? Or you just see the screen?
Both.
Yeah, both.
Okay, cool.
On the way, yeah, but we can.
So you
yeah.
see my child is all over the place. Okay, because on this one I can't see.
Luckily, I can't really see him. He's yeah, from my
Man. Right. So that's exactly what's happening. The taxpayers, I can't tell you guys how many times I've had taxpayers coming to me crying. Like if I'm doing these letters and doing these interviews, literally crying. I have no idea. I didn't understand what was going on, and And for whatever reason, they believe that if I cry or if I blame it on the tax preparer, I won't have to pay this money back. No, sweetheart, you still got to pay the money back. You received the money. You got to pay it back. But they are singing like a bird. I can ask them anything about the tax preparer at that point, and they will tell me anything because they're so scared. They're so nervous. They don't want to pay this money back. I can ask them anything. They're so vulnerable that they will be like, they'll start lying on the tax. They lie on the tax preparer. It's insane the way that they start talking. So it's really important to stay within these guidelines. And like I always tell people, your taxpayers, your tax-paying clients are not your friends. They're your friends until they're not. They're your friends until it doesn't go their way. I have about 3 or 4 mentees in the tax season mentorship program who have complained to me about people who they've been doing their tax returns for 3-4 years. 3-4 years they've been their clients, and because they no longer want to boost their returns, they're cussing them out. I'm going someplace else. How could you do this to me? Da da da. Yeah, but when you were boosting their return, you were their best friend, right? Now that you're doing things legitimately, now you're their enemy. During the season last year, people had gotten on the partner program with me. And when they were on the partner program with me, that means that you're sending clients to me to help them with their tax audits. These weren't even real tax audits that they were giving me. These were basically people who had their returns adjusted in CP22s and CP2000 letters for the fake credits that they put on their return, the fuel credit and things of that nature. And the way they were talking to me, and I'm not even the IRS, and telling me all the tea about what happened when they had that tax return prepared, and how now all of a sudden, oh, I'm reporting the tax preparer because, you know, she wasn't supposed to do this in the first place. But you was with, excuse my French, you was with the shits when you were sitting there getting your tax return prepared. And people get upset with me because I'm very honest. I'm like, you're in cahoots. If you go and you decide that you want to tell on the tax preparer and be upset and do all of this, you're still responsible for it. And furthermore, you signed your tax return, the 8879. So what does that mean? That means you were actually in cahoots with them, and you're going to be just as much as liable as they are. And then they get upset when I say that. But it's the truth. It doesn't take you off the radar. You still owe this money back. And now you're being looked at even closer going forward because you were in cahoots with the whole situation. You're a co-conspirator, basically. So when I tell you your taxpayers are not your friends, when it comes to money, the love of money is the root to all evil. And they feel like you playing with their money if you're not going to boost their return, or if they don't get their money back from the IRS, even if it was credits that they weren't even eligible for. That's that part. I can get into that all day. So the filing season educational letters are the 4858 and the 5364. So if you got a warning shot, shots fired pre-season, the IRS likes to let you know nicely, hey, we're watching you. And then the season starts and you're still doing the nonsense. They send these letters and they're like, hey, we're still watching you and you're still messing up. What could happen at that point? They can turn off your PTIN and stop you from preparing returns. Who wants that? Nobody. But I know too many people that has happened to. What else can happen? They go into actually having a real audit that happens during the tax season, when you don't have the time to just stop and tend to the IRS, but you have no choice but to stop. So, like I said, when they receive these letters, they're on the IRS's radar, and future returns are being monitored. And if the same behavior persists, the IRS will take further action to pursue compliance, which is audit or stop their PTIN. Oh, these are the letters. So this one here is the 5225. Which one is this? The 5025. So these are the letters that they'll receive, the warning shots. We're sending you this letter. Our review of tax returns you prepared shows client returns inaccurately claiming tax benefits. Claiming tax benefits. Your client may face an audit and obligation to repay, and a ban from claiming the tax benefits. So that's one of the letters. Then there's this letter, which should be the 60. Which one is this? Oh, page 2. Sorry. This one should be the 6138, which is the scarier letter, or 5138, excuse me. We're auditing some of your clients' tax returns that claimed these particular credits. We can't supply the details, blah, 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 blah. So this letter to me is the scarier letter, because now they're auditing my daggone clients. I saw today on Instagram, somebody actually put up the letter that is going out to the clients, and they were really upset because within the letter to the clients, it says, to the taxpayer, it says you may want to consider a new tax preparer. And they're like, how can they were so upset. They're like, how can the IRS tell them that they need a new tax preparer? Because the IRS is monitoring the way that you prepare the returns, and the way that you prepare the returns is nonsense. So yeah, they're gonna tell you this, they're gonna suggest you to get a new tax preparer. And these tax preparers are getting upset. How long you think? Let me tell you, all fraud has an expiration date. You could either stop on your own, or they're gonna stop you. And when they stop you, it's not gonna be nice. So that's that part. These are all the wonderful letters that I was just talking about. Due diligence checks with the IRS. So this is after the warning shots. You're still not listening. Now you're actually in a due diligence check with the IRS. What happens? So for due diligence checks or visits, correspondence face-to-face, they'll contact the tax preparer with letter 6199 or 6222 and initiate a due diligence visit, actually coming to the office. So when they're doing the due diligence visit, they're looking for due diligence records, which could be the documentation that you keep, probing questions asked to the client and record of their answers. So remember, when you guys are documenting, you have to document your question along with your answer. All questionnaires, checklists, and worksheets. So that's going to be the 8867 that should automatically pop up and is required to be with any return that has any of these wonderful refundable, non-refundable credits. Questionnaires and checklists, that is basically the things that, like your JOT forms and the answers to those JOT forms and stuff like that, you're required to keep a copy of that as well. Copies of any client-provided documents relied on to determine eligibility for HOH or eligibility and computation of all these wonderful credits. Now, it says copies of any client-provided documents. If the client provided it and you reviewed it, you have to keep a copy of it. 1098-Ts for the educational credits, you're going to keep a copy of it because you got to look at it. Any 1099s, you're going to keep a copy of it because you had to look at it. Anything that you look at to prepare a tax return, you must keep a copy of it. If you collected W-2s, if you collected, birth certificates, social security cards, any of that other good stuff. I'm sorry, what was that? Did I miss somebody? Or was I just hearing myself twice? So birth certificates, social security cards, driver's license, all of that stuff has to be a copy. As you're writing things down, guys, super important, because when it comes to due diligence checks and when it comes to compliance, correspondence, documentation over documenting over documentation. So document over documents with an S, okay? So where a lot of people make their mistake is they say, I reviewed books and records. If you said you reviewed books and records, now you have to keep all of those books and records. So whatever that, if that's the bank statements, if that's a box of receipts, now you have to keep a copy of all of that. If you did not review it, do not write down that you reviewed it. So just remember that. It is document over documents. Documentation over documenting over documentation, okay? So the due diligence checks start with 25 tax returns, right? They start with 25 and they continue to go on and on and on through 25, 25, 25, 25 until they're happy. They check to see if the tax preparer applied the 4 due diligence requirements per the Treasury Regulation 1.6695-2, and they are knowing the facts, as we said before. Got to know the facts. You ask your clients additional questions, not know or have a question to read or reason to know the information provided is inaccurate, inconsistent, or incomplete. If it doesn't make sense, if it don't look right, it don't smell right, it's not right, period. Don't make it make sense. And it's always based off of the information they tell you. Do not ever, 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 ever fill out a checklist for them. That's why I do JOT form. I do JOT form and make them fill out the questionnaire because it allows you an audit behind it. As an accountant, you know what I'm talking about. It will let us know when they filled it out. And if we really got to go to court, we can pull up the IP address because they can say, oh no, she filled it out for me. She filled out the JOT form for me. Okay, now let's pull up the IP address to see where it actually came from. So it has a date, a timestamp on it, a date and a timestamp, and I also make them sign it via JOT form as well. And if we have to get into it, we can get into where it was actually signed and pulled up and filled out via the IP address, which won't be at my house, it will be at theirs. So that's why I'm an advocate for using JOT forms and electronic worksheets opposed to a piece of paper where they can, now it's my word against yours, saying that, oh, you know what? She filled it out for me. So never, ever, ever fill out these questionnaires for them. If they miss something, ask them the question, document it in your system. Document in your files at the time of the interview, the questions you asked and your client's responses. Again, a JOT form will have that nicely done for you. Because of the audit trail that it provides. And also when you're asking the additional questions, you're gonna write the date at the top. That's how you're gonna start it. That's how, just like you would start any other letter, the date of blah, 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 and then start to type in your questions. If you had to go back and ask additional questions, you write that date in as well. Compute the credits based on the facts using applicable worksheets. The computer gives you the worksheets. Please don't try to use anything outside of what the computer calculates. Just let the computer calculate it. Complete Form 8867. Gotta have Form 8867. Got to. Complete, keep records. So we gotta keep the 8867, any worksheets, a record of how, when, and from whom the information used to prepare the 8867, any taxpayer documents provided to you that were relied on to determine eligibility. We kind of just went over that. If you reviewed it, you got to keep a copy of it. Documenting over documentation. So if the first batch of the 25 is cool, you pass the due diligence check, the auditor leaves, they're happy, they go about their business. If they don't like that first 25, they keep going to the next 25, to the next 25, to the next 25 until they feel like stopping. Let's get into the penalties of it all. So just to skip over the regulation and get to the meat and potatoes, in 2024, for tax returns and claims for refund filed in 2024, there's a $600 penalty per failure per return. Remember, you have 4 due diligence requirements. So if you have 4 due diligence requirements and you fail 1, it's $600. You fail 2, it's $1,200. You fail 3, it's $1,800. If you fail 4, it is $2,400. Mind you, they start with 25 tax returns. Imagine failing all 4 due diligence requirements on the first 25 tax return, automatic $60,000. And then the thing is, they can keep going and going and going and going. So you really want to make sure that you're following your due diligence requirements, because I don't know if you have 60 bands just laying around, but I do not. I do not have $60,000 just sitting around, especially not to just give to the IRS. So the due diligence, as much as people, and it's not worth, I mean, are we charging people $2,400 per return? I don't think so. So your penalties are going to be more than they even paid for the return. So it's really not worth it. It's not worth it at all. And then your PTIN gets suspended, your EFIN gets revoked, and now your livelihood to make additional money is completely gone. Not worth it. And this is basically for me, if for anybody that's employing preparers, and that allows people to work underneath their EFIN. So as our program is set up, you guys will be working underneath my EFIN, right? You guys don't have your EFIN, so therefore you have your PTIN, but not your EFIN, therefore you'll be working underneath my EFIN. What does that mean for me? That means that I have a responsibility, God bless you, to check over your returns before they are submitted to the IRS. I have to make sure that the questions are asked, that the due diligence requirements are all met before submitting any return to the IRS. Because although it's underneath your PTIN, I'm still held responsible because it is my job to check over them before it's sent to the IRS, because it's my EFIN that's signed on those returns.
Tammy, can I ask, and how do we communicate that to our preparers? Like, so there's someone else actually e-filing. Is that something that you think we even need to communicate, or?
Oh, you don't. No, you don't have. You're the one preparing the tax return.
Okay.
Essentially, you're filing the tax return, because if there's anything, I'm not just gonna kick it back to you and be like, figure it out. We're gonna have a conversation. We're gonna have a conversation about what's going on. You don't have to say anything about who is being e-filed under.
Okay.
That doesn't matter at all. You're the preparer, because at the end of the day, yes, I'm the EFIN holder, but gross, Shiloh. Yes, I'm the EFIN holder, but you're the preparer.
Okay.
Job is just to check over what you got going on to make sure that I'm safe.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, you don't have to communicate that at all. That's not their business.
Yeah. I was curious just because obviously I've never did. I have the PFIN, but I haven't really done this yet. So I'm like, is that something like, do we, if I'm saying, hey, I'm your preparer, and then someone else is filing?
No, but your name is on there too.
Gotcha. Okay.
Your name. So my Miss Tammy M LLC is on the bottom as the infant.
Okay.
As the EFIN, but your PTIN and your preparer information, you were signed as the preparer, not me.
Okay. Thank you. Yep, I was curious about that.
Okay. Due diligence questions, EITC, CTC, ACT, ODC, all these wonderful questions that are associated with the return. And of course, I give you a complete breakdown of additional questions to ask for this type of stuff. So, example, your client claims a qualifying child other than a son or daughter for the EITC or CTC, ACTC. Question, why aren't the child's parents claiming them? That's a question. Did one of the child's parents live with you? Did anyone else live with you? Are you related to the child? If the child is a foster child, was the child placed to you by a court or authorized placement agency? Can anyone else possibly claim the child? There's probably 10 more questions that I can add to this. And yes, the taxpayer may get annoyed, but this is UCYA. Example, the age of your client compared to the age of the qualifying child seems inconsistent with the norm. Happens all the time. I'm claiming my cousin. I'm claiming this person. This is my godson. Blah, 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 blah. How are you related to the child? Are you related to one of the child's parents by marriage? All of these questions, these are just questions that have to be asked You have to make it make sense. And if it don't smell right and it don't look right, then it isn't right. Not all money is good money. If you are asking, you ask questions to the point of comfortability. If you're never comfortable, that's not the client for you. Your client claims an adult with a disability as a qualifying child. Any adult with a disability is a qualifying child, just to clear that up. For EITC, has a doctor determined that the person is permanently and totally disabled? Again, this will probably be one of the times where I would say, get the documentation, for sure. Does the disability meet the IRS definition of permanent and totally disabled? Those are other questions that you're going to ask. Head of household, some example questions. Ask if your client has ever been married instead of asking if they are single or married. Because again, we have these wonderful couples who like to, you know, do single and head of household. So instead of saying, hey, are you single or married? Because they'll say single, because remember, these clients, they're not dumb. They come in with a plan. You ask them, have you ever been married before? That's a different type of question. It's not this or that. Ask about all the sources of fund used for keeping up the home, including government programs such as rent subsidies or food stamps. Because again, to be head of household, you have to have kept up more than 50% of your household. And if the government is providing more for your household than you, then you're not head of household. How are you related to the qualifying child? Can anyone else in the household possibly claim this child as a qualifying child? Do you and the other child's other parents live in separate homes or live together? Was the other parent or child's parent income, that's supposed to say higher, excuse me, higher than yours? How long has the child lived with you? Does the qualifying person have a job and support themselves? All good questions for head of household. Some additional questions for Schedule C. Have they provided you with information on all of your income? W-2, 1099, da-da-da-da. Evaluate the whole picture. Does the income reported make sense? Make it make sense. Can't be $11,000 head of household status, how, and with 2 kids, 2, 3 kids. How are you supporting them kids? How? Is this a hobby? If your client says they pay more than half of the expenses for keeping up the home, does their income support that? Does the amount of income reported appear reasonable, considering the number of people claimed on return? Look for suspicious W-2s or 1099s. Man, in my DMs, where's my phone? In my DMs, there was a young man who hit me up. Oh man, he hit me up. He obviously didn't know who he was talking to. He hit me up. He was like, I got my EIN. I need to file a tax return. So what that mean? Anybody can get an EIN. I can go get an EIN right now if I wanted to. What does that mean? Well, just to put it out there, I had somebody put me in motion last year and I gave them $2K for a $15K return. What does that mean to me? I'm not understanding what you're trying to let me do. Well, I don't know if you work like that, but I'm gonna break you off whatever it is you get me back. Little boy. You must have not read the room. I'm Taxi Tammy. I'm Taxi Tammy. I'm not your average. I'm not your average. I'm a little bit, annoyed that you even contacted me at this point. And then he hit me back. I said, I'm sorry, I don't work like that. Go find somebody else to do it. He hits me back the next day. What if I fill out a W-2 for you? Then would you do it for me? Man, I blocked them. Because who are you talking to? So you gotta really make sure that these W-2s and these 1099s are legit. Just look at it. I'm not saying, feel it, get a reading of the ink and when it was written. You're not an investigator. But just if it don't look right, it ain't right. Because you have people like him who's gonna make up a W-2 just so that I can do a tax return and get the money back. This is real. It may not seem real to us because we're law-abiding citizens, but it's very much so real. I've seen too much of it. Too much of it in my line of work, and then to have this little boy in my DMs asking me to put him in motion for only $2K. Sweetheart, get somebody else to do it. Let's see. Forms of potentially overstating withholding. Yeah, that's a big one. They will change. Adobe PDF is magic. They will absolutely change their withholding and things of that nature. American Opportunity Credit. How many years has the AOTC been claimed for the student? Is this the first time the student is attending college? Is the student enrolled in a program that will result in a degree? What is the amount of education expense paid toward the tax year? Can you document the expenses paid? And was the student convicted of a drug-related felony? They will be offended when you ask that, but it is a part of your due diligence questions and it must be asked. And be sure to inspect the 1098T for authenticity. Yes, Shelley. You getting tired of me? I'm sorry. I'm here forever. So let's get into a due diligence example question. Number 1, Mary wants to have her tax return prepared. She informs you she is 22 years old and she has a social security number that is valid for employment and issued by the due date of the return. She lives in Iowa. Her 16-year-old sister lived with her. Her sister has an ITIN issued by the due date of the return. Her 14-year-old niece lived with her. Her niece has an SSN that is valid for employment and issued before the due date of the return. Mary's Form W-2 shows earnings of $27,000. Does Mary qualify to claim the EITC with a qualifying child or claim any of these other wonderful credits? Any answers? No answers?
The child has to be, I mean, the sister is over the age, right?
Which one?
Well, the 14-year-old niece.
Mm-hmm. Mary is 22. She has a 16-year-old sister and a 14-year-old niece. Can she qualify for EITC? Do you remember the relationships for EITC?
It has to be blood related.
Blood related and the lineage, right? Brother, sister, I mean, not brother, sister, sorry. Daughter, grandchild, son, the lineage. And what about CTC or additional child tax credit or other dependent credit? Why is my son screaming like that? CTC and ACCTC and ODC, I would say, okay, let's see what they say. Oh, of course they don't say. Why do I not have that in here to say? Basically, first of all, she needs to ask additional questions. I'll give you the answer. She needs to ask additional questions. Hey, oh yeah? She needs to ask additional questions. Or we need to ask additional questions. Where are this girl's mother? These kids' mothers? Like, why are their fathers? Why aren't they able to claim them? Are they in the country? Are they not within the country? Because the only reason why I say the country thing is because they're being issued ITINs. ITINs are generally for people who do not have social security numbers. Remember, for EITC, you got to have the social security numbers, right? So already that takes them out of the running for EITC because you got to have the social security number, or at least the sister. She's out of the running for the EITC, and the niece because of the relationship. And then you have the CTC. You can have an ITIN for a CTC and for another dependent credit. But the additional questions are, where are the parents? Has anybody else lived with her? $27,000 doesn't seem like enough money for her to support herself and 3 other people. What other income has she received? Has anybody helped her throughout the year? Does her 16-year-old and do her niece and her sister work for themselves? Did they make any income? How much income did they make for the year? I know it seems like a ton of questions, but those are the different type of questions that you should be asking to make sure that they actually qualify for these credits. Any other questions that you can think of that could be asked to Mary to make sure that she qualifies for these wonderful credits? The main thing that I see at this point is, because it is her sister and it's her niece, is where are the parents? Why aren't the parents claiming them? Are the parents claiming them? Why aren't the parents claiming them? Where are they? Period. Where they at? Where they at? Because you're only 22. You're only 22, sweetheart. Um, 22-year-old taxpayer engages Prepare C to prepare their 2017 federal income tax. Completes Prepare C's standard intake questionnaire and states that Q has never been married and has 2 sons, ages 10 and 11. Based on the intake sheet and information Q provides, including information that shows that the boys lived with Q throughout 2017, Prepare C believes that Q may be eligible to claim each boy as qualifying child for purposes of EIC, CTC. However, Q provides no information to Prepare C, and Prepare C does not have any information from other sources to verify the relationship between Q and the boys. To meet the knowledge requirement, Prepare Q must make reasonable inquiries to determine whether each boy is a qualifying child of Q for purposes of EIC. This is how old this question is. You see, it says EIC. Told you it was a thing. And the CTC, including reasonable inquiries to verify Q's relationship to the boys. And Prepare C must come, whatever that word is, document these inquiries and the responses. So this is a question that I got straight from IRS.gov. He's got these 2 boys. He's not married. And has 2 sons. He has never been married and he has 2 sons that are 10 and 11. And Q is 22. Already very, very odd. But as it says down here, he must document these inquiries and the responses. It doesn't say gather their birth certificates. It doesn't say gather social security cards. It doesn't say review any of that. This is straight from IRS.gov. I like to take questions directly from there, so then you understand that even they are saying that it is not required to gather this documentation, review it, and keep it. It says to ask additional questions and document the responses, God bless you, to those questions. That's all it says for you to do. We're not going to do B. I can go through these 1,000 times. Hold on. What was that? Oh, that one wasn't there. Okay. So the most common scenarios. And again, guys, this is all on IRS.gov. So if you guys ever get into a situation where you're just like, okay, this is a weird scenario, IRS has common scenarios that you can come and check and see if your scenario fits the tickets. So your client and her husband are separated, and she wants to claim EITC for her 7-year-old child who lives with her. What filing status should your client use? And it'll also give you like the additional questions to ask. Did it come up? Oh no, you can't see it. Share this tab instead. There you go. So these are just the toolkits, and I'm gonna give you guys the links to this. There's a due diligence training that I'm gonna give you a link to as well. So the example 1, a client wishes to have her taxes prepared for you. She's separated from her spouse. Her 7-year-old child lives with her. She wants to claim an income tax credit. What issues should you question? It literally tells you, because you're going to come up with these scenarios all the time. These are very, very common scenarios. It'll tell you what questions to ask. Ask questions to determine if she is legally separated or did not live with the spouse for the last 6 months or of the year, allowing her to be considered to be unmarried for head of household status. What issues should you question? The qualifying child residency requirement, because the father is involved. He's still there. Her filing status, her residency requirement, questions and answers. You ask, are you still married? Yes, I'm still married, but separated. If she's still married, you know she has to file using a married status, married filing jointly or married filing separately, unless she qualifies for the head of household. And if she's married filing separately, she don't even qualify for EITC. You ask, when did you separate from your child? January of last year. Head of household is possible. These literally give you the walkthrough. Literally give you the walkthrough. If you have any any questions. An 18-year-old daughter who lives with her parents, a 22-year-old with 2 sons. We just went through that one. Self-employed house cleaner, additional qualifying child, social security card scenarios. All of these scenarios, you guys will get access to that. I will definitely, yes, I will definitely be giving you the the link to that, as well as the link to the due diligence training. So then you can kind of go through not kind of, I actually want you to go through the due diligence training when you have time to get more familiar with the type of questions, the type of relationships and stuff like that. So, because you're gonna have these people coming to you. You just, it's just inevitable. Just to